From the library of the New York Stock Exchange at the corner of Wall and Broad Streets in New York City, you're inside the Ice House, our podcast from Intercontinental Exchange on markets, leadership, and vision in global business. The dream drivers that have made the NYSE an indispensable institution of global growth for over 225 years. Each week, we feature stories of those who hatch plans, create jobs, and harness the engine of capitalism. Right here, right now at the NYSE and at ICE's exchanges and clearinghouses around the world. And now welcome inside the Ice House. Here's your host, Josh King of Intercontinental Exchange.
We've focused on a big American business with a global following, the National Football League, a few times before on this show. Early on, we talked with the New York Times' Mark Leibovich about his book, Big Game, the NFL in Dangerous Times, and later on, here inside the library, we spoke with Jerry Jones, owner and general manager of the Dallas Cowboys, about the moves he'd make to win another Vince Lombardi trophy. Spoiler alert, Mr. Jones is still on that elusive quest, though his natural gas drilling company, Comstock Resources, NYSE CRK, is trading at a 52-week high as a result of the global surge in demand. And we'll see about whether trading Amari Cooper and freeing up of $20 million in salary cap will give Mr. Jones any closer to his elusive goal. In the wide receiver department, the Los Angeles Raiders are also staffing up. They just got superstar Davante Adams from the Packers for their first and second round picks in the upcoming NFL draft coming up on April 28th. And that's going to give quarterback Derek Carr a familiar target who played with Adams back in their Fresno State days. And speaking of quarterbacks, the Indianapolis Colts have given themselves a makeover, grabbing Matt Ryan from the Atlanta Falcons for a third-round pick, a gambit that the 37-year-old Ryan still has enough gas in the tank to bring a Super Bowl to Indy, just like Matthew Stafford did with the Rams. So, if you're Derek Carr or Matt Ryan, you are a family man, a businessman, and a competitive athlete with an insatiable appetite to win. The priorities sometimes scramble depending on the particular month of the calendar. It happens to be March, so that means it's off-season, a little before a rigorous training and arm rehabilitation regimen kicks off in advance of training camp for the Raiders and now the Colts. If you're Derek and Matt, you're also thinking about the business of football, the young pass catchers on your practice squad, shagging your passes and making a few grand a game, and that maybe, with your leadership and guidance and a little extra love and attention from the veteran QB, one of them might become the next Davante Adams. You're also making connections, meeting people in the business world because they too will become part of it someday. The NFL, we're often reminded, is said to stand for not for long. So let's take you to Las Vegas, Nevada, as Derek Carr and Matt Ryan are making the connection with ICE, speaking live on stage at the ICE Mortgage Technology Experience 2022 Executive Summit held here at the Wynn Hotel on the Strip. It was great, after a 2-year interruption due to COVID, to be gathered again with a few thousand leaders of the mortgage space, the industry's biggest annual event that we're so proud to host. At the Executive Summit session, ICE's president Ben Jackson sat down with Derek and Matt for the kind of intimate, honest conversation with two of the league's premier quarterbacks that you rarely hear on ESPN, where sports meets family, where mastery meets mentorship, where legacy meets leadership. The audience at ICE's Executive Summit came away impressed, as I'm sure you will be when you hear Ben's conversation with Derek Carr and Matt Ryan, all coming up right after this.
And now a word from Fiverr, NYSE ticker FVRR.
Hi, we're Fiverr, a global marketplace connecting individuals and businesses with freelancers offering thousands of digital services. Graphic design, web development, video editing, e-commerce marketing. You name it, there's a professional freelancer ready to make it happen. Filter your search by the service needed, budget, timeline, and boom! Fiverr provides a list of talented freelancers to meet your specific needs. Always know what you'll pay up front. No hourly rates, just project-based pricing. And because payment isn't released until you approve the work, you can rest assured that you'll be satisfied with the quality and get exactly what you want. Our support team is always available to answer questions or offer assistance when you need it. With the whole world of freelance talent at your fingertips, what might you achieve? Join today and find out. Fiverr. It starts here.
Welcome back. Now let's take you out to Las Vegas, Nevada, and Ben Jackson's conversation with Las Vegas Raiders quarterback Derek Carr and, although it wouldn't be revealed until after the ICE Experience Executive Summit ended, Matt Ryan, the new quarterback of the Indianapolis Colts, after 14 years leading the Falcons in ICE's hometown of Atlanta. Here's ICE President Ben Jackson.
I thought I'd just start with just humanizing the conversation a little bit, having the audience get to know you guys a little bit more. And first thing I was curious with, we're about a month out of the season, and would love for you guys to share, what are you doing connecting with the family and stuff with the extra time that you have? I mean, you have 4 kids. Yeah. You have 2.
Yep. It's always tough when you finish a season and you're not in the last game, you're not playing in the Super Bowl, or you're not in the playoffs. That beginning stretch for me it's always kind of, you're just, I don't want to say depressed, but you're just in a funk. You'd rather be playing, you're watching the games with everybody on Saturdays and Sundays. It's just a little, you're off. And then the Super Bowl ends, and that's when I always feel like the off season begins, and you start making plans for, what your training is going to look like, what are some of the things you'd like to work on. But to be honest with you, a lot of it is getting at home. For me, I've got twin boys that are 4, and getting back involved in their life, because you're so busy during the season. You're gone, both physically and mentally, at times. You're so invested in what you're doing. And so it used to look a lot different before I had kids. There was a lot more travel. There was a lot more different things we were going to do. But it's just a good chance to be home, kind of reset. And then, once that Super Bowl ends, it's all about this season and how we're going to be the best team we can be.
I would say the same thing. Yeah, traveling with 4 little ones is not easy, as you know. For me, a couple years ago, we made the playoffs, and it was my first time to get to go, and we clinched like 3 weeks prior, and so I'm feeling good. All the last week, I'm like, we're still in the playoffs, and I snapped my ankle. So this past year was the first time I actually got to play. And, we go and we end up losing to the eventual AFC champions, and so every single weekend I'm sitting there watching, the Bengals play, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me right now. If we did this, we could have beat them on this. You absolutely replay everything, I'm sure, as Matt knows. And so watching every game is hard. It really is. And I've gotten a lot better as I've gotten older at celebrating other people's success. I always felt like, how could I be blessed with something if I can't even celebrate that for somebody else? And so I've been happy to watch other guys' success, and I root for other people and all that, but that doesn't change the drive in me. When Matt won the MVP a couple years ago, I'm still like, oh man, I got to get that. I'm like, Matt goes to the Super Bowl, I'm like, oh man, I haven't got to do that yet. And so there's still dreams and aspirations that you have that are boiling, every year, and I think that's what keeps us going, is all those things. But then getting back into the family mode of, my boys are like, Dad, the Bengals are playing the Titans. I'm like, yeah, let's watch it. Dad, he picked you off, didn't he? I'm like, yeah, he picked me off. Yeah. And so, but being a dad is so much more fun, obviously, than playing football. It's just so much more fulfilling in all those, in different ways. But watching those games with them, going out in the backyard, and they're like picking teams, like, Dad, can I be the Bengals? And they're like, I'm like, okay, you can be the Bengals, and things like that. So
he's a better dad than I am. I tell him no.
Just tell him no.
Yeah. No. Any other team comes up, our guys are like, boo.
Oh yeah. If the Chiefs comes up,
there you go.
You can't be
in
the
division,
Chiefs. No,
in division.
No, you can't be Patrick Mahomes. No. But yeah, no. I think just getting back into that, because they're so used to us not being home all day.
Yeah.
And then when I wake up and I'm sitting there and I'm taking them to school, it's different, and they're excited about it. So I think for me, just getting back into the dad mode, 100%, making sure they know they have my attention, making sure they feel loved and important is always crucial for me.
Draft's coming up in a few weeks here already. Training camp's going to be around the corner. 17-game season coming up as well. What are you doing right now to get ready, physically and mentally?
Yeah, I think, it's changed a lot for me. I think at 23 or 24, your first or second year in the league, your body just heals faster at that time. You can throw more, so I would get into it much earlier, younger in my career. And I think now as I've gotten older, the intensity's the same, but the actual things I'm doing are different. And it's a lot more based on recovery, mobility, flexibility, trying to keep things, moving as good as they can move.
Yep.
And I've gotten into a good spot there. But I typically start throwing, I think I was telling you last night, I typically start throwing the end of March and get into it light. And so I've worked with a couple of coaches in California for a long time. And I'm heading out to see them next Sunday, Monday, Tuesday to kind of get things started. And then from there, we start our off-season program the middle of April. It's not too intense. It's 4 days a week, half a day. You start getting back with your team. You start, looking at what we're going to do offensively. You watch the cut-ups of, the plays that we ran last year. What do we like? What are we going to continue to do? You watch some of other teams. You'll be watching Derek, and what did they do so well last year that maybe we can steal a thing or two? And that goes from April until June. And then we get about 4 or 5 weeks between June and the end of July when we start training camp. And that's typically another time to kind of disconnect. I think one of the things I've learned as I've gotten older is that you have to find ways to get away from it too, because competitive stamina is really, really important. It's a long season, and you've got to be able to have that same level of competitiveness and fire week in and week out from September until the end of February. And the only way I find to do it is to find times during the off season to disconnect, to get away and do some different things. But that's kind of a brief 30,000-foot view of the off season for me.
I am like a meathead when it comes to working out, and as I get older, I'm like, I can't do some of the things that I used to do, and so you learn about recovery and how nutrition plays a part in that. And there's certain things that I love to eat. They're like, you can't eat this thing anymore because it's inflaming this, and it's like, oh my goodness, all these scientists, right? But then you feel your body actually feel better, and these things. So as you get older, you learn more, and same as Matt. In practice, I like to take every rep. So being a backup quarterback for the Raiders is not fun. Like, you don't practice. I literally have to see everything. It's just how I'm wired. I want to see every blitz. I want to see every front. I want to see every coverage. I want to see every look. So my coaches are like, all right, you get an off day today. You're 30 now. And they're like, so we can get the other guys some reps. So that's just kind of how I go about my business. And so during my throwing time, I don't start until mid to late March either. Because I throw so many passes, and there's only so many left in this arm. And as you know, how many years can I prolong this? I take care of my body, and I'm not as big as Matt, so I lift heavy, and I have to be ready for the guys hitting me and things like that. And so that is an emphasis for me. Literally last night, I flew home from Disney World, and I got unpacked and all that, and I went downstairs and got my workout in. It's just this constant, never-ending self-improvement. It never ends. This is 14.
Coming up on 15. So finished 14. Yeah, coming up on 15.
And I'm sure that you're the same way as me. This will be 9 for me. I'm still looking at ways. How can I be better?
There's no question. It never stops.
Yeah.
That part of it never stops. But it's interesting. You talk about timing of throwing and those things. I met Dan Fouts, who's kind of a legendary quarterback. He was for the Chargers, and he's a beauty. He's kind of a really interesting guy to talk to. This may have been my 3rd or 4th year or something like that. And I met him like a week after the Super Bowl. And he was like, how you doing, man? I'm like, good. I just started throwing the other day. And he goes, whoa, 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 whoa. You started throwing the other day? He said, the important time to be throwing strikes is in February. Not before, not after the Super Bowl, before. So he's like, you need to curb that thing down, man. I didn't throw until like 2 days before training camp. And I was like, Dan, I think times have changed a little bit. But, he was funny to listen to, but really good advice in his way.
Yep.
So Matt, Boston College, Derek, Fresno State.
Yep.
Close-knit communities, I'm sure. Tell us a little bit about the transition to the NFL. Some of the things you went through and didn't necessarily expect.
Yeah, it's there's just so many things outside of football that come along with playing quarterback in the NFL, and I think the football part of it, it sounds maybe crazy, but the football part of it is probably the easiest part of it. And I'm not saying it's easy. It isn't. But of all the other things that you have to adapt to, whether that's your personal financing. I was a 23-year-old that didn't have a dime in my pocket, and then a couple weeks later, my life has significantly changed. And how do you get that set up? Who do you find to help you with those things? I came into a really unique situation in Atlanta where they were going through a really difficult time. Michael Vick had been the quarterback and was really, an icon in the city, and then had his issues. And in 2007, they were 4-12, started, I think, 5 different quarterbacks that year. And, I had to come in, drafted third, and then was expected to kind of stabilize the organization. And, I think one of the best parts of being naive and 23 is that you just think you can absolutely do it. You're just dumb enough that you believe you can absolutely do it. So that part of it, being the face of the organization, handling the questions in a press conference, being asked to lead, guys that are 35, 36 with 4 kids, and I'm 23 and I'm dating a girl. That's basically the extent of my life. Trying to be a guy that could lead those men. Those were the things that were difficult, but I really, somehow had really good support around me that helped me get through it.
Yeah.
I think for me, coming from Fresno, coming from that situation, it's Mountain West football. It's not like I'm in the SEC or the ACC, and there's so much of the football aspect to adjust to. The speed of things and all this kind of stuff. And for me, like Matt said, the football part was almost the easiest part. Not again saying that it's easy, because it's definitely not easy, but that part was like where you feel the most at home. Like, this is what I was born to do. This is what I was called to do. And so for me, the football aspect was fun and all that, but then I walk into a locker room where I'm a second round pick, thank goodness, because Khalil Mack was the first round pick, so all the pressure's on him now. If you don't get a sack, they're not gonna be mad at me, And I walk into there and they tell me, you won't start right away and all this, and then I start practicing and they're like, oh man, this guy might actually be our starter. And it was a week before our first game, they're like, hey, you're the starter. And so my mindset went from, I'm just trying to get better, I'm just trying to be a good teammate and a good leader in the locker room, to, no, they're all looking at me now.
Yeah.
And I had a week to get ready for Rex Ryan and the New York Jets.
Perfect.
And he laughs because he knows what that means. And literally, you're only allowed 11 guys on defense, and when you play Rex, you think they have 14.
No doubt. No doubt.
How did he blitz that and cover that? But I remember that, but I'm looking at Charles Woodson, and he's looking at me to be the leader of the locker room. Charles Woodson, a walking Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
He's just adding to his career, adding stats and all these things. And then I look at Justin Tuck, he's Super Bowl champion, and he's looking at me to give the speech before the game. And they're looking at me, and to me, it was a real wake-up call that this game is not going to wait for me to be ready.
Yeah.
Like you need to prepare yourself, and I had obviously good advice leading up to that point, but you need to prepare yourself to be ready for when that moment calls you, whether you're the third pick or whether you're not even drafted. But when your moment comes, you have to be ready to step into that role and lead a group of men that have more accolades than you, have more money than you, have bigger personalities than you, all of those things. And they have to be able to look at you and it's not just that one time. They have to look at you every single day and say, that's our leader.
Yep.
And for me, the biggest compliment I could ever get when I'm done playing is that all the teammates I played with would be like, that was our guy.
Yep.
And so for me, just being ready for those moments, I think that's the most challenging part, especially as I get older. And as you can imagine, the kids come in are wired a little bit different than when I first got into the NFL.
For sure.
And the way I talked to James Jones back in the day is a little bit different than I talk to some of these rookies. But you learn to adapt, And I think it's a challenge, but it's also fun for me to learn how to, okay, this is going to be a different task. I'm not talking to Charles Woodson, hey, Charles, I need you to do, he's going to do it already.
Yeah.
I'm talking to these 22, 23-year-old guys that, I got 4 kids. I'm trying to feed my family based on you doing your job. And how do I get the most out of that kid? And I think that's been the most challenging but most fun part for me.
And that's where I was going to go next. If you flip it around, you guys are both in your 30s, and now you're leading, kids that are coming out of college that for the first time, as Matt, you described, have some money in their pocket. Probably bought their first cool new car, all that type of stuff. What are the leadership traits, and from all the learnings that you guys had coming and making the transition yourself, how do you apply that to helping the younger players really get up to speed and understand what the NFL is all about?
I think you're constantly evolving. To me, leadership is about serving the people that you're working with. And, in the NFL, it stands for not for long, right? You don't have your job for long. And so the amount of turnover in the locker room is incredible. And that's not year to year, it's week to week. And so I have principles and beliefs and kind of a structure that I believe in, but how you get that across might be very different between a guy who's 23 or a guy who's 35, a guy who plays offensive line, a guy who plays wide receiver, a guy who you're never on the field with, that's on the defensive side of the ball, that you might need to tell that he needs to give better effort or be more disciplined with some of the decisions he's making. I think you're constantly trying to figure out what people need from you and how you can get to know your guys as best you can to figure out a way to get the best out of them. I think the only way to do that, though, is you've got to invest in them. It takes time. You have to make an investment in your teammates, getting to know them personally, so that when it's time to either call them out or, be, the dad, the tough love that you have to show them, they know it comes from a good place. And so I've always, made a really good effort to try and get to know the guys as best I can, know what, gets them going, and then, try and figure out what they need from me in order to be at their best. But it's so much different than when I was first coming into the league. I think the world is just very different, than it was in 2008. So you've had to adjust your style. I think it's been good, and I view it, much like Derek said, as a new challenge. I think there's nothing more rewarding than seeing young players who come in on practice squad and work their butts off for a year and a half. And then, like Derek said, at some point your opportunity comes and you've invested this much time, particularly like a wide receiver, and you've invested all of this time with him, and then he gets his one chance, and he's really got 1 week because somebody's got a hamstring or an ankle or something like that, and you see them go out there and the lights are not too bright, and they're prepared and they're ready to go, and they have 3 catches for 40 yards, which seems like nothing, but that is the entire world to them. And it just might mean that their check, is no longer a practice squad check, but an active roster check, which is 4x what they were making. That can change in 3 hours on a Sunday afternoon, but it's changed because they put in that year and a half of work and you found out how to get the best out of them. And that part to me is so cool that I didn't even think of when I was 23, right? Like, it was a very selfish thing when you're 23 trying to figure out how you can do it. But as you get older, you realize it's all about the other guys around you and your supporting cast, and you invest heavily in that.
Oh, that's good. I think, when I was younger, I'm just trying to survive.
Correct.
You're just trying to make it. You're trying to be a good teammate.
Yeah.
You're trying to do all the things right, and you're not really looking at anybody else, And I think what you said is so perfect, because to hear you doing it over in Atlanta, and I'm doing it, was California, now it's Vegas, but it's got to be relational. What makes this receiver tick is completely different than what makes this guy tick. And if I talk to this guy a certain way, he's going to go in the tank, but I can talk to this guy that way. And the ultimate goal is to get the most out of each one of your players. And so as a leader, I have to be relational. I'm constantly texting, hey, let's go play golf. Hey, you like video games? All right, well, let's play Fortnite. I'm like 30 playing Fortnite. Like, just to make a relationship, honestly, to make jokes so that when it comes to that moment, they know that what I'm saying to them is out of love, whether it's to encourage them or it's to discipline, and to correct and say, look, buddy, this is how we do things and you're not doing it. And so when I say that to them, they don't go in the tank. Whereas when a coach just randomly tells them, they go in the tank. Taking all of that and understanding that where they're coming from, you have to go there a little bit. You have to understand, I expect this, but you kind of got to go there with them to get them to where you need them to be. And so, like Matt said, it's a fun challenge. It really is to see that guy. I had a guy named Seth Roberts who, his very first throwing session, he was an undrafted rookie, my rookie year. He dropped every pass. He tried to run a dagger and fell. He just couldn't do it. But he worked his tail off, and I was like, come here, dude. After practice, I'd throw with him. I was the starting quarterback throwing to this practice squad guy because but when you see it, you see something in him, and you're like, this guy's going to play for us. This guy ended up the next year earning the starting slot position. He ended up catching like 8 game-winning touchdowns from me. And when you see those moments, I just run over there and I just hug him. And I was like, I told you, and all the work that they put in, those are the fulfilling moments, when you can take these young guys and you saw the relationship grow from nothing into something, and they make a career out of it. That's when it's really cool.
A lot of us in the room here, as managers of very big companies, are struggling with something around COVID, return to office, and how do you really maintain the culture of an organization? And one thing I'd be curious from you guys, because the NFL was out there first. I mean, you guys went out, played in front of empty stadiums. You had to deal with COVID issues happening on the field, where you'd have a good number of your starters out of the game. You'd have to change and adapt real time. Curious on what leadership skills and lessons you learned from that, and how important it was actually to be together to actually build and develop these young players and to have the team operate as a single unit.
I mean, like everybody else, it was extremely difficult. There was so much unknown. The pandemic started, we were in our off season, And, at the beginning it was like, okay, we might miss a week or two of the off-season program, which starts for us in April. Because I guess this was maybe like March. You're like, maybe this is a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks, we're going to shut down. That sounds about right. And then, boom, it just wiped out that off-season. And then there was touch and go of whether we were going to start training camp. And at the same time, you're trying to work out and stay ready, but you can't really be around other people at this time too. So it was a really strange time to try and get ready professionally. So that part was really strange. I think, flexibility, patience, those were the things you had to hone in on during that time, because every morning we tested every morning from July, 15th, whatever it was when that started, until whenever your season ended. And I mean, that's Christmas morning at 5 a.m. when on your off day, you're in there testing. And then you're driving home and being Santa Claus real quick to get everything, ready to go for the kids. Yeah. But every morning at about 5:30 or 5:45, you didn't know who was going to be in the building that day. Yep. You didn't know if it was not going to be you in the building that day. You just didn't know who it was going to be. And it was the same, for Sunday mornings. I think the thing it hammered home, in a way, was that everybody had to be prepared. Everybody on that roster had to be exceptionally prepared every week. There was no, the third QB is not going to be playing this week, because he didn't practice all week or whatever. You had no idea Saturday, Sunday mornings. You didn't know who was going to be available. And so I think it was a really cool tool to be able to use as a leader to say, hey, all of this ambiguity, we've got to heighten everybody's awareness and preparation during the week, because, there's lots of variables that could come up between now and Sunday that we don't know who's going to be out there. So I think in that one way, I kind of used it as a a tool to try and get guys that typically might be spaced out or whatever, to really lock in. But it was a strange time playing in those stadiums with nobody in it. I mean, we played, our first game of the year was against Seattle, and it was in Atlanta, and there was not a person in the stadium. And we went out for the coin toss, and they flipped it, and then they said go. And you're like, it was as quiet as this ballroom right here. You're like, I haven't played in an environment like this since like 4th grade. And you could hear guys yelling, the coaches. Usually you can't hear any of that stuff. And it's amazing to hear what they actually say to you during games. You're like, oh, you really are. You're a jerk. I didn't realize you were this big of a jerk. So that part was all funny. But, I think that, trying to find the positives in it, being very flexible, being very patient, I think it was the only thing I could do at that time. Yeah.
What's funny is he said it was completely silent. We played a team. I won't say who, because they gave their calls away. So I remember breaking the huddle, and the middle linebacker was panicking because they didn't get the call in. He just goes, quarters. Yeah. So I checked to a double post and hit this big 60-yard bomb on him. Like, there's no crowd, so I could hear what he's saying. I know the coverage, so I checked to a play to throw a touchdown. So it was like, I was like, this is the best thing ever. Yeah. I was like, beautiful. We should keep fans out of the stadiums all the time. This is really good. But it was this. You would, at a home game, I would throw, as you throw half the balls you throw, you don't really see them. You're getting hit, or the offensive line, at least for my case, I'm not 6'5", they're in the way, and you throw a ball, and you can basically know if you're at home, if everyone's cheering, it went well, If everyone's booing you, it did not go so well, and you would throw a touchdown and you wouldn't even know it. Yeah, it was strange. It's super strange. I'd be laying on my back, and so what I started doing is I'd do it, and I'd look to our sideline. I'd be laying on my back, and they'd all celebrate, and I'd be like, okay, thank goodness, And you get up and you go down there. But I think that part of it, to say the least, it was weird for everybody. Yeah. Whether you're in the business world, whether you're in the football world, it was just strange. Now that we're slowly coming out of it and things are starting to open up and things like that, I think patience is key. Some people don't think the same way that you do, and having an understanding for that is hard, especially in a leadership role. Like, why don't you see it this way? That can be challenging, and you have to make those decisions just like we do for our teams. Have to make decisions when to, okay, it's time to nudge you a little bit, or give that guy a little bit more patience, and you'll have to discern that. But for me, it was a great, like he said, opportunity to challenge people to be like, you're the 6th receiver. You're not on the active roster, but you have to be ready to play this week. I remember we were getting ready to play Tampa Bay, and our whole offensive line was contact tracing, and they didn't practice all week. We didn't get our offensive line active for the game until Sunday morning. So I'm going in thinking, I got a whole practice squad offensive line against Ndamukong Suh, and he knows that D-line a lot better than I do. And you're like, oh my goodness. And, it gave guys an opportunity. Really what it did for our team is like, guys felt like we're all in this together.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes when you're on the practice squad or you're not the star, you may feel on the outside a little bit. And it really enhanced the whole team aspect. You know, we're big, you know, in Vegas about there's no star of this team. The star of this team is the team.
Yep.
And if our team is elevated, we'll all elevate, you know. And so seeing our leaders kind of do that in their own position groups and things like that and bring guys along that had no idea. We had situations where guys were on practice squad and then the day of, hey, you have to play.
Yep.
Our right tackle's out. You got to go start, you know. And they go in there, and what a great moment it is for them to play well, and you wrap your arm around them and tell them how great of a job they did all week and those
Yep.
things. So it was challenging, but at the same time, it was very rewarding when things like that would happen.
So in the middle of a game, I'm just curious how much you can share here. You're in the middle of a game, receiver comes in, you get over the headset, option of 2 plays.
Okay.
You think they're both awful and going to end up in a terrible result. What do? What kind of flexibility do you have? You call timeout? Do you have your own audible and just decide to screw it? I'm not going to listen to it, or do you run one of the two and then say I told you so afterwards?
Better when you're an old guy to make decisions.
I was going to say blame the headset. That's like the number one thing. We got a headset that comes in right behind it. Like, I don't know, man. It didn't come in. I didn't get the call. It wasn't clear. You know, it's hard to do though. To be honest with you, you know, it's difficult. Because in football we have a play clock, and so there's the actual game clock, which is 15 minutes for the quarter, but there's a 40-second play clock in between plays, and so that thing starts running as soon as the previous play finishes up. And you're not only getting a play call into your helmet, you're getting personnel grouping. So the first thing that comes into the helmet right after that play's done is they'll be like, all right, Matt, we're in 11 personnel here, and 11 personnel means we've got 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 wide receivers. Now, it'd be nice if they just stayed at like 11 personnel, but it's like, hey, we're in 11 who? That was our big thing when Julio was with us. It would change his spot. Well, then it changes because Julio just went off the field with a knee thing like that. Meanwhile, that 40-second clock is just running down. Then our play calls are like, John's probably the worst of all time, but yes. Your play calls are long. You come in and it'd be like, all right, here we go, gun, trips right, 3 jet, Y attack, can, rub, whatever that may be, something like that. And that's not too bad of one. So all of that stuff is coming in while you've got maybe a player asking you something, you're watching the clock go down from 40, then it's like 25, then it's 20, and at 15 seconds, the play call cuts off. So they might be halfway through a play, and the system just cuts. And it's your responsibility as the quarterback to have known during the week, we game plan this, and I know in this situation, down and distance, personnel grouping, you only gave me half the play. I need to know what the rest of that play is and finish it. And then get up to the line, make sure everybody's set, send the motion, and snap the ball, before that goes. So very rarely do you have the opportunity to be like, you know what? I didn't love that call on 3rd and 2. You're like, shit, I got to get this out of my mouth. Make sure they're set. And I got caught on Monday Night Football one time.
That's hilarious.
It was that kind of exact situation, just a complete dumpster fire in the huddle. And personnel grouping gets screwed up, play call gets halfway through, and I'm running up to the line of scrimmage, and we got a motion on, and Julio's taking like 4 minutes to get into his stance. And I got to motion Mohamed Sanu down right below him. It's Monday night game, so they've got extra microphones. And I get caught clear as day yelling, get effing set.
That's hilarious.
It's like as clear as day. Yeah. And so the funny part of the story is I finish up the game, and after every game I call my dad first and then my mom. My mom hops on right after. We won the game, so it was all good, whatever. And I get on, and my dad's like, hey, good job, you feeling okay, whatever. First thing my mom says is, I taught you better than that.
That's good.
She said, I taught you better than that to be talking to people like that.
That is hilarious.
And I was like, all right, Mom, yeah. You obviously never been in a locker room. Never been in that locker room. But there's a lot of things, to answer your question, there's just a lot of things that are going on. And very rarely are you in a space where you have enough time to be able to do some of that. Most of the play calls we get have multiple options anyhow.
Yeah.
And so that's more of what you would be doing at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that you would hope that you kind of went through the game plan already to where that doesn't happen. Now, when you play for John Gruden, he may pull something from 3 weeks ago because he just sees it and feels it, and you got to remember that. And you're like, the guys don't know that. They don't remember that, but you would hope that you've communicated enough beforehand. But with Gruden, it was like, you'd be blown away. I mean, just by some of the stuff. It was like these dice right, Z left tap, give me 77 zenith, 82 choice, or give me 77, you pick a play. And I'm like, what? You pick a play? You just gave me 4 of them. You know what I mean? Like, and he's like, don't forget it if they blitz, and then it cuts out. I was like, well, what do you want me to do if they blitz now? And so you have different personalities, so to speak.
Yeah.
So you hopefully get in front of it and communicate it. But I think at the point that we are in our career, if it ever came to it, I think that we could get us to a safe play that coaches feel good about, And so that's why I think we've been around, that they trust us enough to do the right thing in that moment.
Yeah.
We kind of joke in our quarterback room all the time that if something cuts out and you call a run play, you're out of the room.
Yeah, you got to pass it.
Done.
You got to throw
You're
it
done.
deep.
So anytime something cuts out, we'll have a bread and butter like pass play, something,
Yes.
a concept or something you feel great about. Go right into a formation, call one of your favorite plays, and just let it rip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't hand the ball off.
Nah, no way.
Get passing yards.
No way.
You got to get the stats.
With the draft coming up, as I mentioned earlier, Falcons have the 8th pick. You guys have the 22nd on the Raiders. How involved are you guys in the room around selecting and thinking about the different players, the types of positions that you think you should be targeting? Mm-hmm. Give us some insight into what it's like for the quarterback in that situation.
Well, I think it's every organization is different. Yeah. Every coaching staff I've been a part of is different, and this is the second GM I've played for, so that part is different. When it comes to the draft, I don't think players are as heavily involved as you may think. I think that you have a scouting department and front office that spends all year looking at these players, and we might watch our alma mater play for like 3 hours on a Saturday. That's about the extent of what we're doing. Where I have found later in my career, I get asked for my opinion more is in free agency, where it's more of an apples to apples comparison. Guys I may have played against, guys that you watch during the year as you're preparing for other opponents. You're seeing other players around the league. More of what I'm asked for in our organization is my input when it comes to free agency and what my thoughts are on guys that we have, but guys across the league that might come available.
Yeah, same. It's different with every coach. God bless you for only having 2 GMs. I think I've had about 9 with the Raiders. But I think everybody's different the way they want to run the business. But it's no matter who it is, it's usually mostly free agency. They want your opinion. Like with Gruden, he would when we were picking receivers, I was watching cut-ups on these receivers, and he's like, tell me what you think, and I was breaking them down and all this kind of stuff. So I had that experience, whereas before, I had an experience where it's like, we're picking a receiver. I was like, well, which one? They're like, well, we're not going to tell you yet. We'll see. I'm like, all right, sweet. So you get both of those, And but when it comes to free agency, and probably more so like every year, no matter who the GM or the coaches are, they kind of want your opinion on that because you're the one playing against them. You're the one that you know him. You probably know somebody that knows that guy. What's he really like? Why? The question is usually, how is this guy a free agent?
Correct.
Why is he a free agent? What can you find out? Is it his personality? Is it his learning? Is it his whatever? Are his legs just gone? What is it? And so players can usually find out that information a little bit better. No GM is going to say, oh yeah, our guy, he can't run. They want you to take him. So all of those things come up, but usually in free agency they come and they're asking a lot of questions. So it's a busy time for us the next couple of days.
Yeah. You guys both had unique experience with Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
What was it like having a reality TV show being filmed and going on around training camp?
Go ahead. You were more recent.
Yeah, with Gru. That was fun.
Yeah.
There was a lot of editing going on. He's a TV guy. He came from ESPN. So he loved the cameras. He loved giving his speeches. He loved doing that. But what I tell people all the time is like the way he was talking, like that's how he is all the time. Like you go to dinner with him, he's motivating you, you know.
Yeah.
Like he's telling my wife about our left tackle, like he needs to set. Like I'm like, Heather has no clue what that means, you know. But it was fun, and I'll say this too, like everyone's like always like, oh, I don't like Hard Knocks, and to me, I don't want people hearing my communication. You know, I want them to hear my snap count. I don't hear my audibles, my hand signals, and so I just communicate with them. I was like, there's certain things that, you know, I'm not going to want you to show. Yeah. You know, there's certain things, because I watch it. If I'm playing a team, like I'll watch their Hard Knocks to just find any hand signal or any, you know, and basically figure out the coverage based on their. I'm always writing stuff down. I'm weird like that. But so there was times where they'd put the camera on me and I'd just be like no, like, and they'd give me thumbs up and go the other way. So they were good for me. Hopefully they were for you. But yeah.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I didn't know what to expect going into it. And the crew is awesome from NFL Films. I mean, these are the guys that we see. You know, we don't see the production part of it, but the actual crew was really cool. It was interesting. So in our quarterback room, they put like the equivalent of a security camera in there. And so it was like, I'll never forget sitting in this room and our desk kind of faced this way and the screen's here and the security camera's up in the, you know, in the top left corner. And so the guys watching it are sitting in New Jersey, you know, in some, I don't know what their setup looked like, but we were told they were in New Jersey. And you would be sitting there watching film or something like that, and you know, you're with your other quarterbacks, or you're with your coach, and you know, who knows what you've just said. But multiple times during that, I would be like, oh God, did you guys hear that? And up and down was yes. And side to side was no. And so you would get like the yes, and you'd be like, you can't use that. I'm sorry. You really can't use that part of it. But that's like we did it a long time ago, but that's one of the things I remember was the up, down, down, or whatever. And that was the way you communicated with them. But it was a cool experience. You still see the guys from NFL Films all the time on game day, you know, before the game they're shooting. So you get to know them quite a bit because they're there so much. But I enjoyed the experience.
The up and down inside, that still works.
Still,
I was doing it. I was like, don't put that. And they'd give me the nod. Like, you're good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
This was awesome. A great experience to do this. It's amazing how much of the leadership experience you guys have is applicable to what everybody in this room does every single day. So we appreciate it.
No,
thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
That's our conversation for this week. Our guests, you heard them, were superstar NFL quarterbacks Matt Ryan and Derek Carr, interviewed live on stage at the ICE Experience 2022 Executive Summit in Las Vegas, interviewed by ICE President Ben Jackson. If you like what you heard, please rate us on iTunes so other folks know where to find us. If you've got a comment or question you'd like one of our experts to tackle on a future show, or someone you think we should have on the show, email us at icehouse@theice.com or tweet at us at IceHousePodcast. Our show is produced by Stefan Capriel and Pete Ash, with production assistance from Ken Abel and Ian Wolfe. I'm Josh King, your host, signing off from the library of the New York Stock Exchange. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next week.
Information contained in this podcast was obtained in part from publicly available sources and not independently verified. Neither ICE nor its affiliates make any representations or warranties, express or implied, as to the accuracy or completeness of the information, and do not sponsor, approve, or endorse any of the content herein, all of which is presented solely for informational and educational purposes. Nothing herein constitutes an offer to sell, a solicitation of an offer to buy any security, or a recommendation of any security or trading practice. Some portions of the preceding conversation may have been edited for the purpose of length or clarity.